Howdy, partner, and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today, as we do just about every day here, don't we, Niall?
We do. Howdy, partner took me by surprise.
Yeah.
Keeping it country today, Robby.
Just trying to throw you off your game.
It worked, I must say. Well, this is a terrific Tuesday. How are you doing?
Just fine. Yesterday, after the show, I said I was going to go home and accomplish a bunch of miscellaneous tasks.
Yes.
And instead I played video games, so I didn't get anything done.
Were you playing against someone, or were you playing for your own amusement?
No, just playing for my own amusement. I'm just about done with the new Donkey Kong game for the Switch 2. I expect to beat it this weekend.
Excellent. Well, you know what I want to do? I want to check out pool halls in DC, because I haven't played pool in ages, and I have a sudden craving to do so.
Oh, like the...
Yeah, like the actual game. Yeah.
How about that?
My sign of my misspent youth. Anyway.
That sounds fun.
Coming up on Rising, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is once again criticising her own party and issuing a warning. They just might lose the midterms if they don't course correct.
Plus, the U.S. Attorney for D.C., Janine Pirro, announced 2 more teens had been charged in the assault of a former DOJ staffer, Edward Korestein.
And Democrats are slamming DHS after learning that they've bought 2 private jets for the department's secretary, Kristi Noem. But first of all, Robby, let's get started. What is on your radar?
Well, remember Jack Dorsey? He was the founder of Twitter, but he exited the company well before Elon Musk took over the social media site and renamed it X. Back in the day, Jack came under furious attack from conservatives owing to the perception that his very liberal site was aggressively censoring the right's speech. Of course, what we didn't quite know at the time was that Twitter faced tremendous pressure from government agencies to moderate content, and that even liberal Twitter employees were privately uncomfortable about what the government wanted them to do. The problem wasn't the site's moderators or Jack Dorsey, the problem was jawboning. Well, in the years since Twitter became X and became a very, very different place, Jack Dorsey's kept, I would say, a relatively lower political profile, but he does resurface from time to time, and yesterday, he made quite a bold political statement. Thomas Massie for president. Now, Representative Thomas Massie, I'm sure most of you know, is a libertarian-inclined Republican who has occasionally clashed with President Trump because he doesn't just support America First. Massie actually votes to implement America First. Imagine that. Makes him different than most other elected Republicans who often do not stick to that principle. Massie, you may know, has continued to pursue Jeffrey Epstein disclosures, even as many other prominent Republicans have lost interest in promoting the kind of transparency that they vowed to foster if they ever return to power. Massie's also skeptical of the U.S. getting dragged into foreign conflicts, whether it's with Iran or Venezuela. And he knows that the administration claiming for itself vast new powers to issue tariffs is going to hurt working people and small businesses. Now, in other words, he's my kind of Republican. He's not an unthinking partisan. He doesn't reflexively side with or against Trump. He has an ideological core that matches our founders: limited government, free markets, and civil liberties. It's too bad he's not running for president. In his response to Dorsey, he wrote on X, "I doubt I'll run for POTUS, but I appreciate the support, Jack. I'd be happy if we could get just 4 or 5 more voices in Congress who don't always just do what their party tells them." Wouldn't that be nice? Right now, it's pretty much just Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene in the House, and Rand Paul, of course, in the Senate. Paul, by the way, had a perfect explanation for why he doesn't support either the Republican plan or the Democratic plan to fund the government. Let's watch.
The way I look at these votes is they're determining the spending level. So the legislation doesn't say, do you want to keep government closed or keep it open? Both parties, when they're in power and the roles change, are guilty of saying, oh, you want to shut the government down. Even though I'm not with the Democrats, I didn't vote for their Democrat spending bill, and I didn't vote for the Republican spending bill. I did so because the spending levels lead to an enormous amount of deficit.
But of course, independent thinkers like Paul and Massie aren't being celebrated for their fealty to principle. They're under attack. Massie, in particular, has attracted Trump's ire. The president even endorsed a primary challenger to Massie, despite the fact that that challenger has yet to enter the race. And of course, AIPAC has targeted Massie and is spending money against him for the crime of believing that America First means putting America first, not a foreign country first, not Israel first. Massie opposes giving financial aid to that country, a country with a lower debt-to-GDP ratio than our own. How dare he? The attacks on these 3, Massie, Paul, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, just go to show that there's really no reward for consistency in Washington, D.C. The swamp is eager to sublimate heterodox politicians and force them to bow to the Democratic establishment or even the Republican establishment. Trust me, there is one. As for me, I'm with Jack.
Excellent stuff, Robby. I agree that it is that the establishments in both parties create this kind of centrifugal force in DC that pulls people into sorts of like unpleasant and overly neat positions. And I can't remember exactly the phrase you used, sublimating heterodox politicians. I think that's true. And I think more heterodoxy would be a good thing, whether it's in politics, in the media, or anything else. As far as Thomas Massie is concerned, there are some things I agree with him on and some things I disagree with him on. I'm sure he's completely unbothered about that either way. And that's fine. I think he does show some sort of loyalty or fealty to his own principles. And I think that's a good thing. Jack Dorsey, I mean, obviously I know who he is, and I remember him as the proprietor of Twitter, as it then was.
He's actually a libertarian of sorts,
That's what
which
I thought,
was confusing because the site was so liberal when he was running it, and there was so much censorship isn't exactly the right moderation that was, well, then it was censorship when we found out the government was pushing for it. We didn't know that at the time. So he really got attacked. And it flipped for me when I would see him hauled before Congress, just like Zuckerberg. And I'm like, oh, like, these people have no idea what they're talking about. The people asking him questions on both sides. You know, the elderly questioning young people about, why doesn't my cell phone load?
Right.
Ugh.
Right. No, I take that point. I think I'm more open than perhaps you are to tech CEOs getting, tough questioning. I take your point that sometimes it would be like Chuck Grassley or whoever, somebody who's not probably the most tech-savvy person in the world asking questions that don't appear to make much sense. I do think that, obviously tech companies are enormously powerful players, not just economically, but in our society. And so I think it's very valid to ask them, tough questions. But in relation to Dorsey, do you see this endorsement of Massie as him dipping his toe back into politics more generally, or do we not really know one way or another?
I don't know. Maybe he just does a lot of drugs or something. And,
he's really a big Thomas Massie fan and no one else.
And just expressed it. I mean, I hope so, because I have started to worry that Massie is coming under very serious attack from the president, and perhaps he would have a well-funded challenger. And Trump is very good at flipping everyone to be in the Republican coalition to be on his side, even when it's, this is, again, this is not the same as like an Adam Kinzinger or whoever who was a Bush Republican and hates Trump, and this is not personal. And Rand Paul always says, I have nothing against him. I like the president. He's my favorite president of my lifetime. I just don't always agree with him, and we've so eroded the space for that. To your point about heterodoxy, this is just not. I'm really maybe to a fault, a stickler for the vision of the founders. This is just so not what they intended. Was when they designed the bodies of our government, when they designed Congress, they did not picture political parties. They were against political parties. It was George Washington's final warning not to start them. They thought, they were concerned about regional interests. So they thought that, sometimes Virginia and New York would agree on something, and Tennessee and whatever. Like, that was their thinking, not that the Republican Party will march in lockstep with a few more interesting dissenters, and so will the Democratic Party, and it will just be a force of will between whoever has more representation. It's just not what they pictured. Our system was not designed for it.
Right, which is, of course, why it then gums up the whole system when that happens. If you can depend on a block of either party voting adamantly for against each other, then it just nothing happens, because there are protections built in that don't have that model in mind.
Right. When you play, I know this from playing board games, from playing Agricola, one of my favorite board games, is a farming game, which you can play with 2, 3, 4, or 5 players. When you play with 3, 4, or 5 players, you would never make a suboptimal move to harm someone else, because then the 3rd or 4th player are the beneficiaries of that. You hurt someone and you hurt yourself. There's more room for, on the contrary, there's room for collusion with another player to your mutual benefit. When you play with just 2 people, well, then you do make a suboptimal move to hurt the other person, because there's no third-party beneficiary. So then it's just trying to screw each other constantly. That's what our politics is. It should be 5-person Agricola, but it's only 2-person Agricola.
I like this analogy, Robby. This segment was not brought to you by, what's it called again? Agricola?
Agricola.
We're not doing this because we're endorsed by your board game.
Big Agricola. It's a great game. So check it out if you're into competitive board gaming, as I am. Still ahead, U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro announced 2 more arrests connected to the August attack on a former Doge employee. We'll be right back to discuss that.
2 more teens have been arrested in connection to the August attack on former Doge staffer Edward Corstein.
You may remember that attack seemingly prompted Trump to first deploy the National Guard in Washington, D.C. U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro said on Monday that 19-year-old Lawrence Cotton Powell and 18-year-old Anthony Taylor have been charged with, among other things, robbery, assault, and carjacking.
At yesterday's press conference announcing the charges, U.S. Attorney Pirro honed in on one of the suspects' criminal record.
I think what's significant about this case is the history of Lawrence Cotton Powell. After a felony of attempted robbery conviction, after a violation of probation, after a second crime, after a second conviction, after no compliance with C. Sosa, the judges say do better and they let him go. And guess what? Within 10 days, he's at it again with Ethan Levine and Edward Corstein.
These charges come just days after a D.C. Superior Court judge sentenced 2 15-year-olds to probation for their involvement in the attack, a move that was highly criticized by Trump and his administration.
Following the announcement, Elon Musk, Corstein's former boss at Doge, called for justice, writing in a post on X, "Those who commit severe violent crime must be taken off the streets." And we spoke yesterday, or maybe it was last week, I can't remember, about why, I understand the outrage at supposed leniency, but the other ones who had been sentenced to probation were underage,
right.
And given what they were charged with and that they were underage and it was a first offense, there's only so much based on the statute that you can do.
Right.
It was in the range of that.
Right.
House arrest effectively instead of up to, I think, 120 days in prison. So, take it or leave it. I was glad to see more charges because there were up to 10 people involved, according to the victims. And now these are 2 other people. And these people are adults and can be charged much more aggressively. And one of them, according to Jeanine Pirro, had quite a record of previous run-ins with the law and sentencing and so forth. And so I hope this is taken very seriously. It sounds like it will be taken very seriously. And some significant penalties will be applied, and that seems entirely appropriate to me, given the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is different than the outrage that we saw the previous time because of the issue that you mentioned. The 2 15-year-olds being underage are going through the juvenile system, and the purpose of the juvenile system is to try to alter people's trajectory so that they avoid future crime. It is not really intended to have a punitive effect. Now, if these people are ultimately found guilty, and we say every time we're discussing anything like this, people are entitled to the presumption of innocence, they will get the chance to rebut the charges in court. But if they are found guilty, they will be then therefore sentenced as adults, and these are serious crimes. It's, I don't want the fact that this has become politicized to some degree to lead people into a position of sort of demanding leniency or making light of what happened because it's sort of somewhat Trump or Musk related. Assault is a serious crime. I understand that these most recent people charged are also charged in connection with an incident that happened right before or right after at some gas station nearby. So there are issues there. And more generally, look, I mean, I don't know really who's arguing for more people who are convicted of violent crimes to be left on the streets. I mean, there is a question in the abstract general sense about whether excessive use of incarceration can be societally damaging or embed people more deeply into criminal behavior. But that's different from saying, like, I don't believe that people who beat someone up should just be let off.
Right. When it comes to, I don't lust after excessive incarceration either. my understanding of the literature is that the problem there is overly long sentences for people who effectively age out of the
criminal
period.
cohort.
Most violent crimes are committed by people between the ages of 15 and 40, or maybe even 15 and 30. That is the task of civilization, is preventing the violence inflicted by men, exclusively men of that age. Much beyond that, your risk of harming others goes down dramatically. Also, what really prevents, what is correlated with preventing crime is not length of sentence necessarily, but certainty of swiftness and certainty of punishment. So a system where if it takes a long time and then the conviction is thrown out for a variety of reasons, and I've discussed previously why DC is uniquely dysfunctional. We have a problem with the judges here have been extremely deferential to defense's arguments about what evidence should count. We've had difficulty even compiling evidence in homicide cases for reasons of the evidence gathering, forensics lab being offline, and so on and so forth. If you don't, you get repeat offenders if you don't punish. It's not about locking them up necessarily forever, but just you do something wrong, you're swiftly tried, convicted, you go to prison. Like that, and if you reoffend, you go straight back to prison, and that is what serves as a deterrent effect.
Well, yes, I mean, I'm sure that does serve as a deterrent effect. The question, I think, is what protections do you have for the defendant? What protections do you have that build on that presumption of innocence? Because I don't think that in the name of speed or efficiency, important protections for a defendant should be stripped away. And I come back in these things to the fact that when a criminal trial takes place, the whole power of the government can be put in the service of trying to obtain a conviction. Therefore, rebalancing that or having actually just a modicum of balance to it involves allowing the defendant his or her proper rights. And I wouldn't like to see those circumscribed in any way.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I'm a big fan of civil liberties, obviously, but something has gone wrong, at least in the nation's capital, with the level of people just, in cases like this, where there are people back on the street despite being convicted, having gone through some kind of system and being, after 10 days, not showing up for whatever, not participating. You have your rights, but you have to participate in the legal procedures and not even showing up for them and being, out causing, not just out avoiding punishment for some past misdeeds, but out there committing new misdeeds.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Raises the importance of doing that.
Right, and I get why people are outraged by that. Marjorie Taylor Greene is making comments critical of the Republican Party yet again. Up next, why she thinks the GOP is at risk of losing control of the House in next year's midterms. Stay with us.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene sounding the alarm bell and predicting that her Republican Party could lose its majority in the House of Representatives.
In an interview with Semaphore, MTG says, quote, "I can't see into the future, but I see Republicans losing the House if Americans are continuing to go paycheck to paycheck. They'll definitely be going into the midterms looking through the lens of their bank account."
Now, the midterm elections are a little over 1 year away, but we love to talk about them now anyway because we're political people. The GOP currently holds a 219 to 213 edge over the Democrats in the House and a 53 to 45 edge in the Senate. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson does not share MTG's concerns about losing the Republican majority. Last week, he told CNBC that he's absolutely convinced we're going to grow the House majority and keep the Senate.
This is just the latest addition to a growing list of criticisms levelled by MTG against her own party. She has, of course, condemned Republicans for declining to release the Jeffrey Epstein case files, and she's called out GOP leadership during the ongoing government shutdown that has now reached 21 days.
Some on the right are blaming her for dividing the Republican Party, but the Georgia representative insists she still holds the same MAGA values that she did when she was elected in 2020. She told Semaphore, "Everyone keeps saying I've changed, and I'm saying, no, I haven't changed. I'm staying focused on America first, and I'm urging my party to get back to America first. What I like about her, I mean, there's really so many things I admire about her, and I said this to our friends on Sunrise this morning. Mm-hmm. She does seem to genuinely listen to what her constituents have to say. Mm-hmm. She often says that in interviews, well, here's what I'm hearing in my district. And I think that's a tendency that not actually all members of Congress pay attention to, especially because of gerrymandering. They're in increasingly safe districts, and so they don't have to have any threat of making their constituents unhappy. But she talks about hearing the impacts of the tariff policies and the mass deportation policies and how that's impacting business in her district. I think those are really good. A good tendency to have to kind of do a reality check. Well, what are the people who voted for me thinking? And again, to her point, this is not an example of someone like going in some never Trump direction and deciding they're an MSNBC liberal all of a sudden, even if they're getting some positive attention from your CNNs and what have you. Is the same exact policy platform she's been supporting all along.
Yeah, well, she's getting some positive attention from me, which is a very unexpected twist in the tale. I do think that she has become a more interesting political figure over time, and we were talking about this in the break. I mean, I do think now she's quite a different figure from a sort of a Lauren Boebert kind of person. She does have more of a critical analysis. She's more willing to break with the party orthodoxy, at least, whether it is on things like health insurance, or Israel is obviously another big example, or comments like this. So look, as we were talking earlier on about Thomas Massie, ideologically she's very different, but having people who are willing to be at least a bit heterodox, a bit outside of or off message, I think is a good thing, and so good for her.
Will Republicans lose control of the House? That is the question. I think it could very much go either way. I think it's close now. What a bold prediction. It's close now. It's still going to be close after they vote. You look at the polling, and there are aspects. Trump's numbers have come down a little bit or quite a bit, depending on what the issue is or what the exact wording is or what the poll is. The Democratic generic ballot is not where Democrats would want it to be, where you'd be like, oh yeah, they're taking it back. Right. Democrats remain unpopular or don't have a popular figure to kind of raise their votes, is my reading of the situation. And so they're not really capitalizing on these certain areas where Trump is a bit vulnerable, or the Republican Party is a bit vulnerable because of what Trump's doing?
Yeah, I think that's basically right. I think there is plenty of opposition to Trump, and we saw that most obviously in the No Kings rallies at the weekend. But a lot of the people who are protesting Trump are also pretty dissatisfied with the Democratic Party. And it's not necessarily that they're dissatisfied from the left, it's that they're dissatisfied, I think, about a perception that the party is either out of touch or failing to fight strongly.
They're dissatisfied from the left, from the center, and from the right. All directions are dissatisfied, which makes it a difficult problem to solve because you can't make one of those sides happy without alienating the others. Next up, Democrats are blasting the Department of Homeland Security for buying a pair of private jets, but the Coast Guard said it's a necessary purchase. Stick around. The Department of Homeland Security has bought 2 high-end private jets for Secretary Kristi Noem and others, and Democrats aren't too happy about it.
The Coast Guard, which contracted with Gulfstream Aerospace to procure the 2 G700 jets, says that they're replacing planes as old as 20 years old that had maintenance issues. Documents from a government procurement website show the total cost for the planes is more than $170 million.
The Coast Guard defended the purchase, saying the jets were necessary for Noem, DHS Deputy Secretary Troy Edgar, and top Coast Guard commandants. Admiral Kevin Lunday, acting Coast Guard commandant, said in a statement, quote, "The timing of this investment underscores the Coast Guard's vital need to modernize its command and control capabilities to meet today's rapidly evolving operational demands. As maritime activity increases and national security challenges grow more complex, maintaining reliable air mobility is essential to ensuring continuity of operations and mission success." In other words, a lot of platitudes there.
Some Democratic lawmakers are not too thrilled about this situation, as we mentioned. The House Homeland Security Committee ranking member, Benny Thompson, said in a statement, quote, "The fact that she, that's Noem, is doing it during a federal government shutdown, while most of the DHS workforce is working without pay, is completely vile." Such spending is blatantly immoral and probably illegal, and Congress must investigate. We said hell no to her request for a $50 million jet earlier this year, but now she went ahead with it anyway while quadrupling it. Congressman Rick Larsen, a House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee ranking member, told Noem she should, quote, cool her jets and fly commercial.
Sean Planky, a senior advisor to the Coast Guard Secretary, responded to Larsen in a statement saying this is a matter of safety and mission readiness. It's well known that senior military officials and cabinet members need secure command and control and rapid long-range mobility. Flippant comments like this are great for clicks and fundraising emails, but don't reflect the reality of protecting the American people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. A lot of platitudes. All of these are just the most basic statements. Look, I don't have the ability to independently adjudicate whether these were necessary purchases or not. I am opposed to government spending. I'm opposed to reckless government spending. I'm just also opposed to all government spending, including necessary government spending. I don't know whether it was necessary or not. But, you know, Congress should be doing this appropriating of funds. So the fact that it's being done while Congress isn't at the top of its game makes it suspicious. So I probably share in the knee-jerk suspicions of Democrats here, and probably Republicans would too if it wasn't a partisan issue, because is this a and Gulfstream Air? What is the name of the company? They're probably
Gulfstream.
Really happy to get that contract.
Well, I actually went onto their website when I was researching this morning. This is their top of the range jet, the flagship of their fleet. And so the New York Times says the total cost is $172 million for 2 of these planes. I see no reason to believe that that is in fact necessary or an important expenditure. Yes, it's important that government leaders get around in safety, but like, do we really need 2 brand new top of the range private jets for that purpose? I'm enormously skeptical of that. There had been in the Coast Guard's budget, apparently, already, I think, $50 million set aside for maintenance of the existing planes. And so if any government official had done this, I would be suspicious. And when Kristi Noem does it, I'm particularly suspicious. There was a controversy earlier this year where she was living rent-free in an accommodation that is normally used by the top, I'm not sure if the correct rank is commandant, a senior person in the Coast Guard. She has previously come under criticism for using transport or travel at taxpayer expense for personal trips and things like that. She, of course, denies any wrongdoing, but it just smells very grifty to me.
I wish our government would channel a more thrifty spirit. I realized I started wearing my long winter overcoat again because it's gotten a little bit chilly, and I had torn the shoulder of it. It's a big ugly tear. I have not bought a new coat. I went back into my closet and found an older coat, more battered, and I'm just wearing that one instead. And I'm going to take the torn coat to a tailor and see if they can fix it, rather than just buy a new one. And if all of that fails, I will buy a new one. But that is the spirit our government should channel. Not just, let's get the newest, most expensivest thing that you're paying for and I'm paying for, you're paying for.
Yes.
Rather, let's see if we can do anything creative to avoid that cost.
I like that frugal Robby is the template upon which the government should work from now on.
Very frugal.
I applaud you for your frugality with your coat as well. My favourite winter coat, the lining of it inside is completely torn up, but no one other than me is aware of that.
But
so
you can't,
if
you stuff a cell phone in it falls right out of
or gets lost in the weird space between the lining and the outside. Anyway, I'm not sure how we quite got onto winter coats, because the point is, I guess, Kristi Noem wanting these brand new jets. I think Democrats are right to criticise it. I do think it is politically insensitive to do it during a shutdown as well. So I think that sort of adds to the understandable outrage about this kind of thing.
Where are you at with the shutdown? Do you see any end in sight? You're a bit more, you pay somewhat more attention to the day-to-day happenings on Capitol Hill than I do?
Well, I might pay slightly more attention.
Well, when we're not forcing you to do double duty as a White House correspondent and also a host of the morning show here.
Well, my big confession is that I often find these congressional dramas a lot less exciting than a lot of my colleagues who do the congressional reporting do, because I think there's an enormous
readers and viewers don't find them very interesting either.
No, well, because there's an enormous amount of sort of performance about it, or choreography about it, or
Who's
posturing.
winning the shutdown? No one's winning it. It's not. No one's going to even remember it happened a few months from now.
Right, that is my view. Now, there was some word about it possibly ending this week. I think it was it wasn't the Speaker, but some Republican had indicated that might happen. I assume what will happen is what almost always happens in Congress, which is that after either side has decided that they've made their point sufficiently, they'll both bend a little bit and things will proceed on from there. I haven't seen even the financial markets or any particular sector of the economy being overly concerned about it yet, because once it reopens, people will presumably get paid. Now, the layoffs, federal layoffs, I think those are a genuine issue, but the mechanics or the performative nature of the shutdown itself.
Well, they're currently trying to find ways to pay the troops in the meantime.
Right.
And whether that's legal or not is kind of an open question.
And I think there's a finite pot of money you can use for it anyway, right? So I was actually speaking to a friend of mine who's in the military at the weekend, and she is still getting paid, but there is that question of like, will that can't continue in perpetuity in the absence of some sort of more fundamental deal.
Yeah, I think it's about time to wrap up the shutdown. That's what I suspect. It's honestly gone on longer than I thought it would, but no one seems to care.
Take down the tent and get the government back open again. I think we'd all like that.
Sadly, that will be the case. Next up on Rising, Charlamagne the God aired out some grievances about MSNBC with Nicole Wallace. Stay with us.
Charlamagne the God aired out some old grievances during his appearance on MSNBC anchor Nicole Wallace's podcast, The Best People.
Charlamagne blasted Wallace's own network, saying that they accused him of MAGA messaging during the 2024 campaign for amplifying voters' concerns. Let's listen.
You can't tout things like Bidenomics when people aren't feeling that in their pockets. You know, you can't just ignore people's criticisms of the border and chalk it up to MAGA messaging. I'll never forget when MSNBC did that to me. And MSNBC did that to me based off me listening to people in New York City, listening to people in Chicago, activists in Chicago, and them telling me what their issues with the border were.
Charlamagne also said one of the problems Democrats had was not listening to their constituents. Here's a little bit more.
Their issues weren't based on any type of prejudice for who was coming across the border. It was literally economics. It was, hey, these people are coming across the border and getting more resources than we are. And I remember me repeating exactly what I just said based off the conversations I was having with people actually in the street in these areas. And MSNBC said I was repeating MAGA messaging. I was like, damn, that means that y'all really are not paying attention to your constituents.
Charlamagne has also been critical of Democratic Party leadership. In April, he called for both Democratic leaders Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer to get primaried or get thrown out of office. He also coined the nickname AIPAC Shakur for Jeffries, to which it seems Jeffries has not responded. Good nickname, to be fair.
AIPAC. I like that.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I remember when he was talking about immigration and was frustrated with Democrats on that. Of course, the border is a couple different issues. There's just the border security and the dysfunction that results from having people illegally entering the country via that means and causing some lack of safety for themselves and some and kind of disorder and dysfunction for Americans who live in that area, for swamping the kind of resources available. No one thinks that is good. No one supports that, but it really had gotten out of hand during the Biden administration and has greatly improved, and that's a good thing. And then there are concerns about the effects immigration are actually having on the society, which there's a couple different categories, fears about crime, and then fears about social services being swamped or abused, and then the kind of competition for labor is like the category. And I think that last one does appeal or apply to some people on the left. I mean, Bernie Sanders himself famously inveighed against open borders as a Koch brothers proposal. It came after me and my backers for supporting more open immigration.
Yeah, look, I mean, immigration obviously is, by its nature, a complicated issue. There are the elements that you mentioned. There are also, let's be honest, there are also xenophobic or racist elements to it as well. People fearful of the hordes, you know, who are coming in out of a racist or xenophobic or nativist impulse. But I think
fears that were applied to you and I, the Italians and the Irish.
They were, absolutely
despised by the native population, and now our people are despise the people coming up next.
Well, that's the thing. It's a very good book, actually, How the Irish Became White, which is all about that transition from the underdog kind of mentality to a class, Irish Americans, who were often very inglorious and unadmirable in their attitudes toward black people.
Right, Nick. I saw Nick Fuentes make this remark. I mean, he is becoming a big thing. Made this remark that New York should be run by the Italians and the Irish, and he was naming white groups that would not have been considered white people 100 years ago.
Right, the precursors to Nick Fuentes would have been massively.
Get them out. Get those Catholics out.
exactly. All of that stuff. Now, as relating to the Charlamagne thing, I think he does actually put his finger on quite an important point, which is the idea that if you raised any of the more legitimate concerns about immigration, you were, and at least he believes he was, accused of raising MAGA talking points. So it seems like he was talking, I think, primarily about the issue of A, competition for resources, and B, some of the sort of labour laws. Does it weaken the leverage of workers if you have a large undocumented or illegal population, all of those sorts of things, and then obviously got blasted for MAGA talking points. To me, that goes to a whole bigger issue, which is, well, firstly, the desire to just have people recite whatever the party line is, which we don't like, but also the fact that the immigration issue has been, I would say, a more difficult one for not just the Democrats in the US, but for centre-left parties generally to grapple with, because they don't want to give backing or legitimacy to the racist elements opposed to immigration, but they also don't want to seem completely cut off to the concerns of working class voters who were born in the US or born in the UK and are now feeling that they are failing to get the kind of support that might make a big difference in their lives because there's an enormous amount of money being funneled toward it.
I mean, it's been a tough issue for market or free or market-oriented parties that span the center left to the center right, because markets love immigration, frankly. They love immigration and free trade. They love openness. They want labor is a component of delivering goods and services, just like raw materials are. And what a profit maximizing system wants is free movement of goods and raw materials and labor everywhere, and because that's what drives up profits, that's what creates capital. Right. So that's what the market wants, and if you get in the way of that, it makes the market unhappy. But in the process of allowing for that as unfiltered, as unfettered as possible movement, you get other effects, social effects, cultures, friction, butting heads, and that makes people uncomfortable, even if, for instance, my understanding of the statistics is that illegal immigrants are not responsible for a disproportionate share of our crime. Of course, they commit crimes, as does everyone.
Else. Right.
But every time an illegal immigrant commits a crime, it speaks to it raises people's dislike of that category, and they say, well, they're illegal anyway. They shouldn't have been here at all. There should be zero crime from illegal immigrants because they've already broken a law. And that is I found that to be a persuasive argument for people, or one to argue. I think it's more complicated to point out, as I like to do, well, even if there are harms associated with it, you're overlooking the larger and more spread out benefits of the increases in economic productivity and the lowering of the cost of products that results from having a generally more permissive immigration system.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand the anger whenever someone who shouldn't be in the country commits some heinous act. I think everyone...
I understand. I feel it too. I share in the anger.
I think everyone understands that. I think that the bigger point is that the benefits of immigration are not... I mean, people have almost stopped making that argument, it seems to me, and that's a problem because, in fact, there are economic benefits. Now, there is, again, the separate argument about unregulated illegal immigration undercutting the bargaining power of workers in the host country, workers born in the host country. And that's something that definitely, you know, the left overall has to grapple with a bit better than it has been doing, I would say. But there's a lot of demagoguery around the issue, but there are legitimate concerns as well. And I think that's what Charlamagne
I mean, if you're in the... If you do only have a high school education and you're in the service industry, it is not as obvious that the benefits to immigration are outweighing the competition for your job or the competition for the social services you're more likely to rely on for welfare or for the education system. Or if you're a less income person, you're not feeling those benefits, and so something certainly needs to be done to make sure those people are not left behind. But obviously we can't, an economic system that is based around just protecting those people from competition is one that's not going to be competitive on an international scale. So it's not about, I don't want to protect them from the competition. We need to find some kind of way to provide for them as we move forward.
Well, yeah, and I would like a greater solidarity to be developed in a meaningful way between them and the immigrant populations.
Well, next up, the White House has decided to troll the left by joining the social media platform Bluesky, my favorite place. We'll be right back after this. The White House, in typical fashion, has decided to troll the libs and join the social media platform Bluesky.
In its first post, the White House wrote, "What's up, Bluesky? We thought you might have missed some of our greatest hits, so we put this together for you. Can't wait to spend more quality time together."
I love it. The White House also attached a Sizzle reel to their first post. Here's part of it.
My fellow Americans, our movement is far from over. In fact, our fight has only just begun. We are one movement, one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So with American pride swelling in our hearts and American courage stirring in our souls, I say these words to you tonight. We will make America great again.
Many of the top replies to the White House's post were calls to release the Epstein files and references to Trump's previous relationship with the now late convicted sex offender. Bluesky, of course, is a social media platform that more left-leaning users favour over X. It began to gain more traction after Musk purchased X, then Twitter, in 2022, and some users began leaving.
So MAGA has punctured your liberal bubble, Niall. So much for your safe space, my friend. Here comes Trump. I know you're shaking and grasping for your microaggressions.
Shaking in my boots. I am on Bluesky. I'm also on X because I like both of them. I haven't seen you on Bluesky. You haven't joined up.
No, I'm on. I have an account.
You have a burner account.
I don't post there very much, and it's nothing personal toward Bluesky. I am just maxed out on the number of social media sites I can reliably check into and hang out on. It's basically just X and Instagram for me at this point. I don't post to Facebook anymore.
Of the large ones, Instagram's the only one I don't have. I just never really liked Instagram.
You can follow me on X and Instagram. So I have met the CEO of Bluesky, and I thought she was a brilliant, fascinating, lovely woman. My sense is that She wants Bluesky to be a platform for all users, not just an enclave for the most safe space liberals. And in fact, liberals have been on the site, have been kind of attacking her lately for refusing to ban Jesse Singal, even though there is no reason to ban. He has not violated any policies of this site. He's not a.
They just don't want him there. Basically,
they're how worked up they are about him at all times.
Pretty exercised about that.
If this were like a village or something, they would pitchfork him to death.
Yeah.
My friend Jesse Singal, it's very sad. She's a perfectly normal person. The site has a bunch of crazy people on it, and that, which is fine. But every now and then I search my name there, and
they don't love you on Bluesky, I would imagine.
String me up right next to Jesse Singal.
That's terrible. We don't want that.
Robby is such a
oh no,
expletive.
This is terrible.
It's fine. I don't care. It's fine.
Look, as a site, it's prone to groupthink for sure, and we don't want that. And I would have similar criticisms of those other platforms that are more right-leaning in various ways. But the one serious point I suppose I have to make here is that this propensity to have the White House official account or Trump himself trolling the libs, of course I see why some people find it amusing. I do find it kind of unbecoming of the President of the United States to be involved in this kind of thing, or the previous one about No Kings, where there was the pretty gross AI thing
that was
we
awful.
Talked about yesterday.
Honestly, it depends if it's cringe or not. This was kind of funny. They're going on to Bluesky. I thought this was funny. A lot of them, or especially when it's from like the Department of Homeland Security and like agencies that are supposed to be doing things, and it just all of their communications now are this. And some of these people are not as funny as they think they are. Again, it's different if it's actually funny. Yeah. A lot of this is not funny.
Well, also a lot of the DHS stuff I think is terrible. That sort of elevation of very sort of traditionalist, pro-white awfulness, I think is really, that stuff I'm much more offended by than even Trump and his memes, which I just find distasteful. The DHS stuff I think is very, very toxic indeed.
Yeah. The plain one with the excrement is just gross, guys. Come on, let's grow up a little more maturity, please. Does it for us today on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you tomorrow.